As we're talking, you're starting to do some drawing. I know that drawing has been a big part of how you've been spending your time for the last several years. Have you always been involved in drawing?
Yeah, my father taught my brother, I show my brother how to sketch. I started, not how, but just started to sketch it. My brother can see anything and draw it right on. You know? But he doesn't have an imagination like I have.
So the imagination is...
That's it. In everything. Imagination.
That's my impression, that your drawings are kind of like you're playing in some ways. It's
well, what it does is it's balance. If you make a drawing, a sketch on a page, you have to balance it, you know? And that's the way most everything is. Art is. Like music, composition, solos, clothes, you know, when you dress up.
balance.
Yeah. A little over here, a little there, a little there. I really started to sketch again after I married Sister, because she takes so long, you know, actresses, they take so long to get ready for anything, you know. Rather than scream at her, I just started sketching, especially on planes. After we had a close call going to Peru for the Miss Universe contest, the plane dropped about 2,500 feet and then dropped another 1,000 feet. You know, and everybody was, some people were crying, and what's his name, David Copperfield was on it. A lot of celebrities. Then I started sketching, you know, because it really sketches. That's really a trip to do that, to go through that. So now when I fly from New York to California, sometimes I sketch. Most all the time I sketch. All the time I sketch. If I don't go to sleep, I'm sketching. And I've done sketches it took me 5 hours, you know, to finish. But it relaxes you, you know.
You're spending most of your time in California now.
Most of the time, I try to stay here because of my circulation, good for my circulation. The cold weather really does a number on my skin, and in New York, the air's dirty, the streets are dirty. But that pace in New York, I love that pace. So I would never just live out here all seasons, just in the wintertime. Either there or the south of France.
You really are part of the greater art community, not just the music community. You're one of the few musicians in American jazz to have made that transition.
From what to what?
From being thought of as a player to being thought of as an artist.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, if I was thought of anywhere else than that, you know, I wouldn't want to be here if I couldn't contribute. You know, I was telling some friends in Sweden, if I couldn't do anything, you know, like help. If I was in some other form of art, if I couldn't discover something or help the art, a new way to do this, you know, like that, I wouldn't want to be here. You know, I would just want to be dead if I couldn't create. That's what I'm trying to say. If I couldn't create, it would be nothing for me to live for, you know? If I couldn't, like, maybe write a composition that I like, not somebody else, you know, that I would like and my friends would like. And they say, yeah, Miles, that's good. If I couldn't do that, I wouldn't want to be here. It's selfish, I know, but geniuses are selfish.
Part of your genius has been, it seems, to take groups of musicians and put them in challenging situations. Looking back over the output of your recorded work, the newness, a lot of times, stands out as much as anything. The fact that you're creating situations that force musicians to rely on their instincts rather than their habits.
That's right. It's the group of people that you associate with. It's not all me. It's them. People like Herbie Hancock, those people that I work with, Chick Corea, and recently Randy Hall and Zane, that helped me with this other album. They're talented people, especially when they get in their creative period, people have creative periods where they, like that, and then if they could just wait on that, or recognize it when it's there, I recognize it in other people, I recognize it in Wayne Shorter and Herbie, Chick, Keith Jarrett, Sonny Rollins, different people, Philly Joe and Red Garland.
Again, part of the message of your music seems to be yourself and the minimalism of your own music, the pretty notes.
Pretty notes. And if you play a sound, you have to pick out, it's like the eye of the hurricane, you have to pick out the most important note that fertilizes the sound. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It makes the sound grow, and then it makes it definite so your other colleagues can hear and react to it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If you play what's already there, they know what's there, The thing is to bring it out, you know what I mean? It's like putting lemon on fish or vegetables. It brings out the flavor. And that's what they call pretty notes. Them just major notes that should be played.
You talk about the sound of the composition as if a song or composition has a central sound to it, a sound source.
I try to get his sound, whoever's writing the composition. If I'm going to play something against that, I have to get the sound that he wants in there without destroying and blowing over it, so that not to bury it. You know what I mean? So it takes it really takes a long time to do that, If you lean in that way, it's not. But if you aren't, somebody tells you. When I was about 15, a drummer, I was playing a number in the Castle Ballroom in St. Louis. We had a 10-piece band, 3 trumpets, 4 saxophones, And he asked me, he said, "Little Davis, why don't you play that what you played last night?" I said, "What? What do you mean? What?" He said, "You don't know what it is?" I said, "No, what is it?" He said, "You were playing something coming out of the middle of the tune and play it again." I said, "I don't know what I play." He said, "If you don't know what you playing, then you ain't doing nothing." Well, that hit me, Like, bam. So I went and got every book that I could get to learn about theory. To this day, I know what he's talking about. I know what note he was talking about.
What note was it?
It was a raised ninth. Flatted ninth.
This conversation about the sound of the composition brings to mind the recording Kind of Blue. Kind of Blue is the #1 jazz record on virtually all the critics' lists. When you see the list published of your 10 most favorite records, Kind of Blue is almost always on those lists.
Isn't that so?
Does the success of that record surprise you, Miles? It seems like such a simple record to have made in a way.
Not back there. Because Bill Evans is one of my all-time favorite pianists, Bill Evans. His approach to the piano just brought that piece out. Because he used to bring me pieces by Ravel, Concerto for Left-Handed Orchestra. You heard that? What's the piece? Ravel's friend went to the army and came back. He was a pianist, but he lost his right hand, so he wrote a piece for left hand and orchestra piano. And Bill used to tell me about different modes, which I already knew. And we just agreed on something, and that's the way the album went. We were just leaning toward like Ravel and playing a sound with only the white keys, you know, Dorian minor modes, and it just came out. It was just a thing to do. You know what I mean? Like an architect, all of a sudden, all of the architects in the world would start making circles. You know, like Frank Lloyd Wright. All his colleagues that are leaning that way thought the same way at the same time, you know? So it was Bill, you know, and it was made for Coltrane.
Yes.
You know, that kind of thing. Because I used to give him a lot of chords. I'd give him like 5 chords in one. And I told him, you can play either one, you know. So he was the only way one could do that. But I got it from Rachmaninoff modulating from key to key. Bill and I used to talk. I would train the little chords like that to play, you know, and against one sound. You know, like it's just, if you, instead of saying D dominant 7, something like that, you can play under the chord, over the chord, you know, a minor third up in all chord, a minor third up from the 5th of the chord, you know. But it has to be a dramatic player like Train was, you know, who can just turn you on with a sound of one note and a group of notes. Only 2 people I ever heard doing that was Charlie Parker and Coltrane. You know, that's the only 2 that I ever heard in my life do that.
The similarity between those players strikes me also.
Wait a minute.
The rhythmic freedom in the way they run changes in a way.
Train didn't start playing like that till I got him a girlfriend of mine in France. One day she said, Miles, these guys want to talk to you. They want to give you a trumpet or something. So I said, I don't feel like talking to anybody. She said, they just want to talk to you and maybe you can pick out a couple of trumpets that you want. You know. So I said, okay. So I also got a soprano sax with Train. He never put it down. We was on a tour with Norman Granz. He played the soprano sax in the bus, in the hotel, every day, all day, 24 hours. And he got that sound, you know. And then I gave him those chords, and he just went, you know, because he wasn't playing like that, you know. Sometimes when a guy a player plays so loud that it locks him with the sound that he left. You know, like, bam, you know, it blocks out everything else. So I gave him all these options, you know.
Hearing you talk about this session and the recording of that particular song, I'm struck by the fact that, like Duke Ellington, you would prepare music for your players rather than bring music to them and say, play this. That the music really does come out of the people you're hanging out with and recording with.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Duke is one of my favorite composers. You know, just lately I've been hearing in my head Rain Check that he wrote. It's the name of the song.
You mentioned Coltrane's sound on the soprano saxophone. At one point, Coltrane said that he had been hearing a higher sound and hearing a higher sound. It wasn't until he had his hands on the soprano that he actually was able to realize what he'd been hearing in his head.
Right. See, it takes a long time for guys to develop. You know what I mean?
How come nobody can get your sound? It's a simple gesture, it seems, but it's very difficult.
I have my own sound because when I was like this, my trumpet instructor, I loved the way his sound, you know. He was black and he used to play with Andy Kirk, and he played in the low registers of like Harold Baker, and you know, I just leaned toward that cornet sound, you know, like Nat Adderley plays cornet. But it's just a sound, and it's, you know, it's just popular. You know, like years ago, composers, the reason Beethoven was you read about Beethoven because he was the one that they could understand. The other ones, you know, that they couldn't understand, they didn't mention it. So my tone must be the easiest for somebody to hear. You know, like Louis Armstrong and that kind of a sound. Mm-hmm. But see, your sound is like, you know, it's like your sweat. You know, your sound. Lefty Young had his sound. Eddie Davis, Coleman Hawkins, Browning, Clifford Browning, Fats Navarro. You know, there's no more sound. Freddie has a sound, but during those days when you didn't hear anybody to copy, guys got their own sound. But now that you have so many records and cassettes, it's no more sound. They copy it. They copy the sound. You know what I mean?
That's an interesting point, though, that before there was such wide recording distribution, people were forced to develop their own sounds.
I've been forced to play without. They didn't have anything to listen to, you know. But when you watch guys play an instrument and you like the attitude, the concept, the way it looks, the way they hold it, the way they dress. But nowadays, you know, I saw 4, maybe 3 trumpet players in Lionel Hampton's band. And they were white, right? They all sound alike. They all sound like Wynton. He doesn't have a distinct sound, but Freddie almost has. Woody Shaw is real creative trumpet. He's like Dizzy, you know. They might do anything. I mean, you still can get a good solo out of Dizzy, you know, because he's like, he really turned my brain in Charlie Parker and, you know, those guys. They did a number on my head, you know, as far as me learning, you know.
How did they do it?
They just opened it up.
Just hearing it.
But what they were thinking, it put a stamp on what I was thinking, that it was okay to, you know, go like that. But trumpet players now, Freddie almost has his own sound. I still can't tell him. Maybe if I listen to him a little bit more. But it's now that Fats Navarro has that sound. He is in Browning, and that's the same style.
You mentioned people getting excited about watching a player, and I remember you saying at one point, well, you can know everything you need to know about how I play by watching how I stand.
It's a certain way, like when I play, sometimes if I play at that high from the floor, it's another sound that you can get.
Right, when you get over and put the bell right off the floor.
And it's, you know, maybe one over there, maybe one up there, but I never go any higher than that. You know, sitting straight up maybe. But I found out in Juilliard that if I stayed any longer, you know, I was gonna have to play like a white man, you know, and I was gonna have to act like a white man toward music and the direction, you know what I mean? So I left, you know, because there was certain things you had to do, certain way you had to play to get in there and to be with them. And I didn't come all the way from St. Louis just to be with a white orchestra, you know. I turned down a lot of those. But I found out, you know, that I could go my own way. I had to catch my friend Freddie Webster. I said, Freddie, I'm going to St. Louis, you know. And he was one of those guys. I said, man, you know if you go to St. Louis, back to St. Louis, and them hooges and crackers there, you're going to get mad and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, you might get killed. So I said, no, I have to go to tell my father that I'm going to leave Juilliard. He said, why don't you call him up? I said, not my father. I can't call him up and say, I'm going with Bird and they do this and this is this. You know, he was a professional man. He was a surgeon, right?
I know.
So he said, okay. So I called the train. I went in his office. He looked up and said, what are you doing here? As soon as you get there, he was, you know, working on a very patient. He was a dentist, dental surgeon. So when he got through, I said, this music is happening, Juilliard isn't, and I'm down on the street where everything's happening. More so, I'm learning more down there what I want to do than in Juilliard. You know, my trumpet instructor Juilliard is still in the Philharmonic Orchestra in New York. Mm-hmm. He taught Wynton. I think Wynton, you know, took some lessons from him. But I couldn't do that, you know. So he said, okay. Well, so I said, save your money, you know. So that was it. But I couldn't stay. Am I messing up something right now? I couldn't phone him from New York and tell him that. You know, Duke Ellington, he knew, but not Dizzy and Bird and Monk and Coleman Hawkins. Although we did have a record of Coleman Hawkins playing Body and Soul and Art Tatum. That's the only records we had in our house.
Those two records?
Art Tatum. We had MJ Blues by Duke with Jimmy Bland. Bland is from St. Louis, from my hometown. And Duke Ellington, that's it. And Art Tatum. Oh yeah, and I had Bird on with Jay McShann, Hootie Blues.
Oh yeah.
And Basie, here we had quite a bit. Well, that was after I knew what I wanted to hear. Because those bands, those days, Earl Hines and those Jimmy Lumpkin, Sonny Stitt was with the McKinley Cotton Pickers, and they had heard about me in St. Louis, and they wanted me to go, and my mother wouldn't let me go. I said, oh, shit.
You got there by going to Juilliard, in other words.
Right.
Yeah. These days you're talking about, it seems so far away from today. The times, the way music was treated by players.
Yeah, I know, something else gets in your mind, in my head, but those are good memories for me, you know.
It seems a major thing has happened to all music, not just jazz, and that is it's moved from music that was captured in a recording studio to music that was manufactured in this recording studio. It's a whole different premise now, the way we're putting it.
We don't do that. We sequence layers of orchestration, and we play the same thing in person, but only we goose it a little bit. You know what I mean? You're free to improvise.
How is recording a record like You're Under Arrest now, which is a large process, and different from the way you used to make a record where you come in with some tunes and and go out. Do you approach it a lot differently, or does it feel the same to you?
It's easier.
Really?
Because Randy and Zane, guys that I'm working with, and Adam, I'll show Adam what I want, write it out, play it. He'll play it when we get to the studio. When I get there, all of that is on tape. You know, it feeds right to the board, and all I have to do is play over. It's easy like that. I like to work crazy trying to make decor. I mean, I threw everything out. We just start from scratch with me, and now I just take studio, Adam. We use a drum machine to keep it in, because I tried to put things together in decor, and the ones that didn't have it in the drum machine, the tempo was doing this and doing that. And musicians feel sad, they have personalities like Al Foster, like some of them want to play, and it's no part for them. I can see they don't feel it. But rather than wait for 2 and 3 sessions for them to feel like it and learn the composition, how to add to the composition, rather playing over it like a lot of guys do. They play 2-minute notes, like Mike Stern. I tell him all the time, I said, Mike, you need to go to Notes Anonymous. Like AAA. I mean, it's much easier now for me. Because, like a guy like George Duke, he writes the composition, it's all there. You just play on it. And respect the man's, composition, But you have to pick the people that you want. You see, my voice is changing because, this is very touchy with me. I don't want to fire him. But I do want, when a person writes a composition, you have to let that composition soak in. You know what I mean? You have to try to see or hear what the composer wanted. And you have to play that style. Not that you're just gonna play your style in somebody else's music. If they compose it, they didn't want that kind of thing in there. And you're gonna do it on every number. So we don't need that. Or if you're in a rhythm section and the tempo drops, you get mad because somebody tells you the tempo drops. We don't need that. We have time, it's right there. As long as electricity is on, the tempo is like that. And you don't have to use an excuse like, I can't play with the drum machine, it's no excuse. If you're a musician, if you love music, you would want Body and Soul to sound like Body and Soul. Or you would want Human Nature to sound like Human Nature, as Michael said.
Well, what about Body and Soul? And what about those pretty songs?
Those songs, to me, don't exist. We don't have time for Body and Soul, and I Got Rhythm. Or So What? All kind of blues. Those things are there. They were done in that area, the right hour, the right day, and it happened. It's over. It's on the record. People ask me, why don't you play this? Go buy the record. It's still there. What you like is on the record. You don't like me. But I don't want you to like me now, unless you like the music. Don't like me because I'm kind of blue. Like me for what I'm, for what we're doing, I was put here to play music and interpret music. That's what I do. No attitude, nothing. That's all I want to do. And I do it good, because my colleagues say, yeah. You know what I mean? And that's enough. for me to keep doing what I do. That's it for me, you know. All the rest, people think I do this, I do that, I do that. Yeah, I do that and this, you know. I might do a lot of things, but the main thing that I love, it comes before everything, even breathing, is music. That's it, you know. Nothing. You know, I buy Ferraris, cars, a box, yeah, but music is always there. Right in.
And that means you're going to have to keep hanging out with musicians.
That's
and you're
right.
going to have to keep your ear tuned to the radio. And you're going to have to plug in all the latest machines.
Right.
Because you can't go back.
I can.
Is there a record that you really want to make that you haven't made? Are you going towards something in your head? Or are you just doing it as it comes?
No, I got something in my head that I'm getting ready to show Adam.
But is it day by day, or is it a large project
It's
that you
just
have
something
to...
I run across, you know, that's happening, you know. And it's nice, you know, I love it. I love to feel like this, you know, because it's something that knocks me out.
I got one more question for you. The song Nardis. How did you happen to name it Nardis? Do you remember?
No, I can't remember. It might have something to do with nuclear.
It was a long time ago, I guess.
I know I did for Cannibal. I think I just like the name. What does it mean?
I don't know, but it's my last name backwards.
I'm kidding. I don't know, but that's a nice name. I'm kidding.
Well, Miles Davis, thank you very much, man. We can't wait to hear what your next record is going to sound like.
I can't wait myself. I want to see how you react to it.